Episode 26. Control-Alt-Delete.
26.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like the episode description, Control-Alt-Delete is computer code for abortion, a rather pertinent topic to be knowledgeably discussed by two men. One of whom
Yeah, or not knowledgeably discussed.
Exactly. Neither of us are gynecologists. I may be a qualified medical professional, but gynecology is, it's not really something you see a huge amount in ED. So, yeah. See a lot of it on labor ward or on a gynae unit. I don't even know why I came up with that, man. I'm so sorry. It's just...
I mean, we're supposed to be super dangerous. We should talk about anything, even if we don't know what the hell we're talking about.
I mean, isn't that not the most dangerous thing to talk about? That which you know very little of, yet talk at length or pretend to speak knowledgeably thereof.
Well, it's funny. It's like, I feel like I'm at least, what's the word I'm looking for? I have a shallow surface level knowledge or awareness of a great deal of many things. However, when it comes to, personal, what should I say? When it comes to, personal familiarity with the intricacies, that I feel, I'm lacking on almost every topic I can think of. One horrible example is, people think that, I'm like some master carpenter home builder because I've built some homes for myself. But the reality is I just know how to put two boards together and put a bunch of nails or screws in it. And if you do that enough, you have a house. Not actually a carpenter, but I play one on TV. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that probably applies to me on many levels.
I don't know though. If you're good enough to build a house, is that surely not just good enough?
No. So it's funny. I actually feel like maybe this is a really fun topic, especially getting into, weird philosophical, moral, crap that is happening in the world. It's like, it's interesting because I'm not a carpenter, and nor do I even understand how I don't even understand fine woodworking. I have no fine woodworking tools. I have basic saws, tape measures, levels, and squares. And I don't understand complicated wood joints. There's a million things I literally have no knowledge of. However, you give me a big pile of material and I will hack and scab and cobble, and then a house comes out of it. And, it's really interesting how little I can understand or little I can know about, actual, actual construction or framing, and yet still build something. But, at the same time, I don't try to I don't try to push myself and do things that I don't know or understand, because I've decided that, at least in regards to building houses, that simple is beautiful and perfection is the enemy of done. And so I just do what I know I can do quickly and easily. And it just so happens to translate into at least, medium quality, decent stuff that people understand. So I can kind of get away with it. So maybe on that level of expertise, we can bumble through some of this discussion.
Fair enough. I just want to say, listening to you speak about carpentry, I realize you do have at least one common thing with Jesus Christ, which is the one thing that is connecting this underlying topic here, I feel.
Oh God.
So, Jesus, over to you. What do you have to say on this topic?
Oh, wow. Just like that on the spot?
I mean, I was hoping Jesus would pitch in and say something, but... Do you hear the voice of God anywhere? I don't.
That's funny. When I was younger, I had really long hair when I was in like primary and middle school, and everyone used to pull my hair, which I hated. But everyone also called me Jesus. That was my nickname actually all the way through high school, because I had long hair. And yeah.
I am really trying to process this. So, kids, you had long Jesus-like hair. You are a carpenter. You were persecuted to the point that you were tortured, such that all of your hair has literally been pulled out. And
my hair was pulled a lot when I was younger. It's funny. You know, the kind of things that happened to me in school, I just kind of chalk up to just being, kids are cruel and being young can suck. But I'm pretty sure that things that I dealt with not that long ago, you know, because I'm only, you know, in my very, very, very early 40s. I feel like the kind of shit that would happen. I mean, you would get in some real trouble probably for what I would consider to be mild harassment that I endured when I was, you know, when I was younger. So yeah, we're living in interesting times.
I'm just getting this around my head. So I'm a qualified medical professional, but I'm not a gynecologist. And you're a carpenter who once had long hair.
Yes.
But you're definitely not Jesus. But I feel like we're half qualified. So
we're half qualified.
Good enough. We're half qualified, which means maybe we could have a good enough discussion on this topic. What do you reckon? Will good enough do on this?
Well, so here's the thing that I really struggle with. I'm going for it. I'm jumping right in. So, okay, first off, there's a lot of, okay, here we go. So there's a lot of misconceptions about what's going on. Now, like I said, I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not a constitutional scholar in regards to the founding of the United States. However, the United States is a weird experiment. It's it set the template for modern democracy, and for whatever that's worth. And there is a much larger amount of checks and balances, imbued inside the U.S. governance system than you would expect. The Supreme Court, or SCOTUS, as it's known, the Supreme Court of the United States, is specifically there to...
Could we call it the Supreme Ruling Court? No, wait, Supreme Court Ruling of the United States, because then you get SCOTUS.
I know, and a lot of people use it, and a lot of people, SCOTUS is very popular, and yeah,
Good.
I know
that is definitely a thing. Now I am reassured. Carry on.
And so, I don't fully understand all of the intricacies between the executive branch and legislative branch, and exactly how. Go ahead.
I just want to go straight for the jugular here. I thought politics and religion were somehow meant to be kept separate within US governance structure. So why is the Supreme Court effectively imposing a very particular set of religious beliefs on everyone?
Okay, time out. So here we go. So we're really gonna go into the weeds. I hope you're ready. So the Supreme Court did the
context, by the way. So Roe v. Wade has been appealed. States can basically pass laws to ban against abortion. Prior to this, there was a federal mandate that meant all states had to offer abortion services.
Yes. So time out. So what? This is so complicated, and I just really want people to understand that as I'm explaining all these things. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to go right. I'm going to go right for my own personal jugular. I fundamentally do not believe that the government, state or federal, should be messing around with these matters at all. I think that these are like societal and cultural issues that need to be decided amongst individuals. So, I am not for what the Supreme Court did, and I'm all, it's very complicated, right? So I literally just do not. I think that when the government gets involved in people's personal decisions, such as the drug war, or pick any one of 100 different issues, I think that they make things worse, not better. And so I'm coming from the standpoint of one side wants to, or the religious side wants to use government to protect what they define as unborn humans that are defenseless. The other side wants to use the government to defend their right to do whatever they want, possibly even have late term abortions, right? So I don't think either side should have. I don't think either side should command the halls of power to influence the other side to do anything, which means that people are going to be free to do whatever they want. And so in that particular instance, it would seem that the people that don't believe it's a human up until the day of birth are the ones that are going to be able to do what they want, whereas the religious people feel like they're living in a country that is full of baby murder, right? So I'm not even interested in trying to tease apart like the actual moral construct and try to figure out how to come up with it, because we could spend literally the rest of our entire lives about arguing when is a human and when is a child sentient. And it like, oh my God, all I know is that if the government gets involved, it's likely to make whatever the underlying issue is that anyone has worse. And so I just don't think it should be, I don't think government should be involved in marriages. I don't think it should be involved in like these types of like medical questions, or even I guess, up to a point, even, philosophical questions, because like you said, the entire objective of at least one of the major objectives of the founding of my country was to create a state apparatus, hopefully free of religiosity and religious persecution. Right. So now, a case could probably be made that both sides are trying to do the same thing to each other based upon ideological grounds. I just want to sidestep the whole thing, jump back and say I just simply don't believe that the state or the state or the government in any shape or form should even be messing with this, right? So I feel like that's probably a pretty hardcore approach, and an approach that will make both sides angry with me. But the reality is that I believe that, the reality is that I'm not on anyone's side. I just don't think that the government should fuck around with this at all. But so getting to your point, I actually think that the opposite just happened. Okay. So the Supreme Court's the highest court in the land. So the Supreme Court rules the Supreme Court rules on behalf of, the federal government, so far as I understand it. What the Supreme Court actually just did is they said that Roe v. Wade was a bad ruling, and that the Supreme Court, in fact, does not have the right or authority. Okay, the Supreme Court did not say abortions are bad. The Supreme Court said the Supreme Court does not have the authority to rule because this is a states' right issue, right? Now, on the philosophical side, this is the Supreme Court reducing the scope and breadth of federal government power. This is decentralization, okay, on the face of it. And it's something I didn't expect, right? And so typically I'm all about decentralization, and I'm all about, the spreading out of centralized power. So philosophically, I like that. The downside, though, is that there's going to be probably 12 to 14 U.S. states that are going to make access to abortion services harder than they already are. Right now, some of these states already made it really difficult to do because Roe v. Wade was pretty imperfect, so far as I understand it. And there are some states that actually made the acceptable window with which you could legally terminate a pregnancy already like very, very narrow. Right. So this is an interesting thing where the Supreme Court did not say, the Supreme Court did not ban abortion, didn't do anything. It literally said we are now invalidating a 50-year-old thing a previous court did because we don't think the previous court understood the role of the Supreme Court properly. We don't believe the federal government even has this power. This is a states' right issue, and so we're just getting out of it, right? It just so happens, though, the end result, like I said before, is that a quarter to a third of the union are probably going to move to make abortion more difficult to do than less, and this is ultimately going to affect maybe 10 to 30 million women that are going to objectively be experiencing an even harder time getting access to these services, which I think sucks, basically, right? Because I just don't think that the government should be getting involved with this at all. So this is a weird thing, and people are really misconstruing it. People are thinking that the Supreme Court is basically siding on like some weird like religious moral grounds. They're trying to appeal to like conservatives. I don't think that's what happened at all. I literally think they just said we actually should not have ever ruled on this, and they basically invalidated the work of a previous court. And so now it's a states' rights issue. And that, for people that want to use the levers of government to push their ideological goals.
So my question then is, if that's what you believe, why didn't this happen like 10 years
abortion
ago?
is a crime? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it's a really complicated thing, and it's not what people are suspecting. The Supreme Court did not say abortion's bad, ban abortion. They didn't say anything about it. They actually kind of almost did the opposite by saying we are no longer going to even, like, we don't have a dog in this race, and we shouldn't have had one in the first place. And so when it comes to what's going to happen in these states that are going to probably move to ban it, I mean, Texas, crazy restrictive, right? Texas is one of the most populous states in the country, and I'm pretty sure Texas just literally said, even in terms of rape or incest, abortion is no longer legal, right? I think that's crazy. And there's probably going to be, 8 or 9 states that are probably going to eventually move to make something like that, codified by law. And so, I just don't really know what to say, because I think for people that feel like they need access to these services, it's going to get a lot harder, even though it was already hard to begin with. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand.
So I just want to challenge one assertion you've made, which is you don't feel religion had anything to play with this. So if that argument that you said, which is that this should never have been essentially federal, it should have been state controlled, why didn't this decision get overturned 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
I don't know.
So I just want to say, I want to offer like a contrarian opinion here about, states banning abortion. There are a lot of people who are going to say that's a terrible thing. But here I am. I'm going to just say it right now. I think those states are doing wonders instituting total abortion bans, like complete. And I don't think they go far enough. Hear me out. I think they should issue out death penalties for anyone who performs an abortion in those states.
I actually think that's on the table in some of these states.
Really on the table. Excellent. So I don't think that even goes far enough, because we're talking about the right to life here, right? So if we're going to start instituting the death penalty to protect the right to life, I want us to go a step further, because I don't believe life starts at that point of fertilization. Life starts at the point of conception, and the point of conception is really the point of thinking, yeah, I want to do this. I want to put my seed right there in that. I want to have a baby. So my thinking here is we should criminalize any act of going, I want a kid. Change your mind. Fuck it. You have just aborted a child. Death penalty. And that's how we fix this. That is how we fix this problem. Every time someone thinks of conceiving a child and changes their mind, fuck it, you've just aborted someone right there. And I want that to be recognized as a law in these states that are enacting these sweeping changes to their medical policy. I think it's a reasonable outcome.
So I find this entire thing supremely frustrating.
Because the people who should be getting off aren't. I get it. There are lots of people thinking about having kids who change their minds, and that's an utter tragedy. And these people should be put to death. It's simple. They should be on the chair. They should be getting the lethal injection is too good for these people who thought, I want a kid, I want a family, change my mind. You've just denied several, hundreds of lives potentially down the line. Generations have died because of your choice to suddenly change your mind. To me, that's disgusting. That is anti-life.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I mean, if you decide you want a kid and you change your mind, I get it. You're hesitating. You still killed someone at the end of the day. And I want you to learn to live with that, Joe. Just I want you to know exactly what I think of you. Every time you've thought to yourself, I want a kid, and you change your mind, fuck it, you're a murderer.
Well, it's funny because I'm one of the few people I know that knew at a very young age I never wanted to start a family. I never wanted to have my own children. It's probably somewhat due to my upbringing, and also just because, you know, it's a super dangerous club and we're all about, you know, having these talks. I got a vasectomy when I was 21 years old, and it was really fucking hard to do. And no doctor wanted to perform it. I think most of them literally felt like they were violating their medical ethics doing it on someone so young. But, you know, I clawed and battled and struggled my way through about 9 months of arguing with urologists, and eventually was able to get it done. So, you know,
how did you persuade them? I'm genuinely curious, because I felt that way at your age as well.
It's a really really long story, and I'm gonna like totally dodge it, but and give like, you know, I don't mind discussing it publicly. It's a very long story, and I'm going to dodge it and give like the 45-second version. And we can always have this again later. Probably not today, because it's like I'll rant for 15 minutes about it easily. But long story short, I was just neglecting to put my age down on intake forms for various urologists. And inevitably, when they would obtain my physical ID, they would see how young I was, and they would either just stop communicating with me, or they would deny me access to my appointment. Right. And so I just quit putting down my age. And I had, I think 2 or 3 false starts where I was able to get an appointment. I'd like leave work in the middle of the day, and I would drive like an hour and a half one way. I get an appointment. They would like get my ID in person, because they would realize they didn't have it on the file, because I would just neglect to provide it. And then they would tell me they couldn't do anything. I would argue with people, never the doctor. And then I had to go back home sad, and I would be miserable. But the time that it actually happened, I think that the office that I went to, they were performing something like 30 vasectomies a day. And that's pretty much what this urologist was kind of specialized for. It was $500 cash money. The guy's doing like 30 of these things a day. It's like an assembly line, you know, boom, 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 boom. And it's like a 15-minute procedure. I received what they call the no scalpel vasectomy, which does involve a scalpel, but it involves like a pretty small incision. Basically I got all the way prepped. One fun part of that story was that I never received like the intake packet telling me how to prep myself down there. And so I did not know I was supposed to shave my scrotum. And so they had to do that there. And when I said I actually had the joy of having that procedure done to me by I think a Marine or an Army reservist, still wearing fatigues, with a buzz cut, who said, "Oh, you didn't prep. Oh man, that sucks." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Because I'm going to have to prep you down there, which involves shaving." And I'm like, "Okay, this is deeply intimate." And the guy goes, "Yeah, and I have to do it with a disposable razor." Literally holds up a $1 Bic razor from like the 10-pack at the dollar store, and says, "Oh, and because to maintain the sterile field."
Just let you shave them yourself.
No, because it has to be done a certain way. And also for time, because this is like a vasectomy assembly line. And so not only did the Marine have to shave my nether regions, they had to do it dry, because they couldn't let any shaving cream be near the surgical site. Yeah, this is just one tiny little bit of the story. But anyway, I'm all prepped. Doctor comes in, and doctor comes in like hands already in the gloves, you know, hands up.
Can we pretend his name is actually Doctor Comes In? Because that would be so ironic for a guy who does vasectomies. Like a doctor comes in, zoom, 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 zoom. Yeah. Next in line, zoom, next in line, boom. You're on the conveyor belt. Comes in, goes out, no more fertile.
Correct. That's actually not entirely true, but anyway, there's a lot to discuss.
No, that was a misinformation. Yes. Anyway, look, let's skip that bit. Yeah.
But anyway, doctor comes in, recognizes I'm pretty young, asks me, I'm on the spot. I think, do I lie? I decided not to lie, told him my age, and just seemed like very confused and said, why would you, he said something like, why do what are you in here to do this for, son? Or something like that. And I gave a brief list of reasons. The doctor made one of the worst choices of his entire life and suggested that my partner at the time, who I was with, that was having some health issues involving reproductive bits, specifically endometriosis, he heard my complaints and my desires. And then literally suggested that if she had so much trouble, she should get a hysterectomy at like 20. And that enraged me so much. I got into one of the, my eyes rolled back almost like a shark before it bites. And I became so angry. I began, I guess coolly yelling at this doctor all the stats about how dangerous that procedure is for someone young and how safe the one I'm here for is. Because what we were really trying to do with my relationship was we were trying to increase the amount of available ways that we could help manage my partner's endometriosis and her pain. And so, me being infertile actually dramatically opened up the ability to try different things, different hormonal birth controls, things that may work, may not work, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was just doing my part as a supportive partner. I also knew I didn't want to have kids. Anyway, I seemed to be so persuasive, or the doctor was simply physically afraid of me because I was really angry. Eventually,
forget he is actually just a robot urologist.
Yes.
So you are completely justified being mad at him going outside the limits of his programming, talking about gynecology when he should have kept the discussion within the limits of the urology discussions that his AI was programmed to do. He deviated from his assembly line routine.
So, these topics about, fertility, they're actually kind of deeply important to me. And I've been around them since I was very young. And, considering that I was, putting a lot of energy and really trying deeply to help someone who I was with for over a decade deal with deal with some of their illnesses and ailments. I was incredibly well versed in what I perceived to be an incredible lack of care or understanding for some of these, more female-centric reproductive issues and ailments. And I think I unleashed multiple years of research and, straight spitting hate on this guy who I perceived to just be clueless and have basically no idea what he was actually talking about. And I forgot what the number was, but it was a non-trivial amount of women undergo, actually die undergoing these kind of much more extreme invasive procedures. And all I was there to do was turn off my little, I was just there to turn off my fertility, perhaps only temporarily.
Never mind. Like just a quick aside. If you're getting a hysterectomy at 20, you're on hormonal therapies pretty much for the rest of your life. And then I don't even really want to get into like the dynamics of this, but like just the risk of fragility fractures in a young age is huge because
it was insane. It was insane. And my anger, I feel like my anger of multiple years was building up over what I perceived to be a very lackadaisical, careless, or just, inappropriate care that my partner had been
receiving. The viewers at home, let's clarify this. A vasectomy against a hysterectomy, this is not an apples to apples comparison. It's not even an apples to oranges or an apples to pear. It's an apple to the fucking moon comparison level of difference.
Yes. But
round objects, but they're very different things.
When I was watching the doctors try to take care of my partner, I felt like they were just throwing weird hormonal treatments at her in the hopes that some of them might reduce the symptoms of endometriosis pain and bleeding. And I thought that it was pretty much criminal, not borderline criminal. I thought that it was criminal how little it seemed like they were interested in actually trying to find some kind of solution to underlying problem. They were just, here, try the Depo-Provera shot. Oh, you're anemic now because you bled for 6 months every day. We're going to try this and we're going to try this. And I was just like, this is fucking insane. And my partner was so fed up with it. I mean, this was a real quality of life issue for both of us, for her specifically, but definitely both of us in our relationship. And so, having the freedom, them having the freedom to actually be able to experiment and try to figure out what treatments are going to work for them, which eventually we stumbled upon no treatments, no hormonal birth control, none of that shit. A lot of exercise, meditation, yoga, plant-based diet actually solved 90% of her problems. And none of these things were ever discussed. They were just throwing pills and shots at her.
Basically lifestyle modification factors.
Correct. Yeah. Lifestyle modification factors, which there was zero, training or zero, information for. And anyway, so, I'm in there talking.
No offense. I mean, you're in a privatized healthcare system that's like pharma companies.
In a small town.
Element of that the incentives are kind of aligned towards the thing that makes the company money.
Yes. Yeah. And now I wasn't savvy enough to understand it at the time. I just knew that our options were getting very narrow. This person whom I loved was not getting better or really getting the kind of treatment or quality that I thought they deserved. And here I am trying to do my part, which I considered to be easy, safe, and reversible. And I'm running into friction, which just the injustice of it just kind of turned into this, 800-pound gorilla, which manifested in front of a urologist trying to deny me the procedure. And eventually the doctor's eyes glazed over. And at one point he just holds up his hands and he only said 4 words to me after I ranted for what I felt like was an hour at this guy. And he held up his hands.
And they were CTRL-ALT-DELETE.
Nope.
Proceed.
He held up his hands. And he refused to look at me in the face or even look in my direction. He was looking away. He held up his hands. I shut up for like 5 seconds. And he goes, "Get on my table." That's all he said. That's all he said to me. I got on the table. And thus was, and thus commenced one of the most like surreal experiences of my life, where I was watching somebody perform surgery on me who was clearly about as mad as you can get and still be functional. I mean, bright red.
I can tell exactly what's going through this guy's head. Is like, fuck it, this is too much work for $500. I want the $500. Get on the table.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, as a doctor and someone who's probably done a lot of procedures, I feel like you can relate to this. But this is the next 15. It was only 15 minutes, but the next 15 minutes was a surreal experience to put it lightly. The doctor was visibly angry and almost unable to control it, but was still. So imagine
watching angry vasectomy.
Yes. So imagine.
Yeah.
Well,
gonna give it. Yeah, you want it. You want it. Huh? You don't want to be fertile.
So it's funny because the opposite happened. So imagine watching somebody that's barely able to control what looks to me like a fit of rage or a rage quit.
Barely able to control.
However, their hands were moving swiftly and and so delicately. It was as if they were a hummingbird. Okay, a hummingbird, getting the nectar, without even touching the sides of the flower.
This is such essential discussion for what we're describing. But carry on.
So in between,
like we're writing a porno right now.
In between changing tools and grabbing things, he was slamming his tools, kicking things, making a racket, just being petulant and destructive. But then when he would touch me, he was so delicate I could barely feel it. It was a very surreal thing. And the last 30 seconds of the procedure, he's pinching the incision shut to try to get something to heal before putting in a single suture. And when he puts in the final little suture to seal it up, he quits pinching me. He turns around in his chair, doesn't look at me. He slams He slams the tools down on the metal tray. He kicks the metal tray across the room so hard that it hits the wall and falls over and makes a really loud crash. Crash so loud, I heard one person down the hallway of a closed door go like, oh, because they were surprised at the sound. And he storms out of the room.
That is amazing.
Yep, he stormed out of the room. And the military service member working in a urology vasectomy assembly line clinic to maintain their hours for service just looked at me and said, "That guy's a ball buster. He's never done anything he didn't want to do. I don't even know what's happening." And so, yeah, I was able to finally get it done at a young age. Yeah, I mean, I'm all on the vasectomy train because I feel like it's easy, it's inexpensive, and for most people it's reversible. And I had always told myself, if I changed my mind and actually decided I ever wanted to have children, which I have not, but if I ever had decided that I wanted to, I could go someplace and pay between $2,500 and $5,000 for a reversal. And if I can afford to do that, I should easily be able to afford to do that if I was actually serious about having children and starting a family. But there's even other ways that you can not even reverse the vasectomy and still father, such as, viable sperm extraction and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah. So I'm pretty close to these topics, and yeah.
I just want to say, actually, like in terms of discussions about bodily autonomy and choice and medical choice and freedom, you've kind of hit so many nuanced topics in the last 5-10 minutes of discussion here, because this is actually, if we're going to talk about abortion, to me, the whole thing is about autonomy and choice and medical decision making and things to do with capacity. And when you were sort of talking through that, firstly, I just want to address the fact that you were basically describing when he was working on you, it was a thing of gentle, smooth beauty. And when his hands were away from you, he was literally a pro wrestler, like body slamming equipment around him. And that's the hallmark of someone who's literally just is so skilled at what they do that they know how to vent in a dissociative, proportionate, controlled way. They just, they're that in control. And that is a weird thing of beauty. But what I wanted to say is, when you were sort of talking about that, one of the things I was thinking was, to me, the whole concept of abortion is about choice. And in ED, in emergency medicine, in accident emergency, one of the things that we see quite frequently is people who come in, say they want to self-harm, or say they're planning to kill themselves, or they're going to do this, or they'll be like, if you send me home, I'm going to go take an overdose or do X, Y, Z. And one of the things you're doing when you see these people is you're risk assessing them to see, okay, what's the likelihood they'll do it? And also, what's the probability they'll come to harm? And also, do they have capacity? And in England, in UK law, not that UK law means anything, because UK rule of law is dead. If you've been following the news, there is no law in the UK. It's an anarcho state with nothing, but that's a different topic for another day. In codified UK law around mental capacity, the Mental Capacity Act, we basically go, firstly, capacity is assumed by default. Like, it's just assumed as the default position that someone has capacity. And in order to go, if you don't think someone has capacity, you treat them in their best interest. So the sequence goes, do you think they have like an organic impairment of their brain functioning that could impair their, or their functioning that could impair their capacity? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, proceed to this checklist. Can they understand information sufficiently to make a decision? Can they retain that information for long enough to make a decision? Can they weigh it up to make a decision? Can they rationalize it? And then can they communicate that decision to you? And if they can do that, if they can understand, retain, weigh up, and communicate information, then even if they're making what you may consider to be a bad choice, if they can demonstrate those aspects, they got capacity. Where it becomes a gray area is where you think they have a psychiatric illness that is impairing their capacity. And then that's a real gray area, because actually most people who say they're suicidal most people who say they're going to self-harm or have self-harmed or will self-harm, they actually do have capacity. And if you really kind of dig down into it, they don't really have an underlying psychiatric illness like that's influencing their behavior. What they've got are complex psychosocial factors, like, they've got post-traumatic stress disorder, abusive childhoods, problems, from parenthood or from when they were raised, or at stages in their upbringing or at stages in their life they've had traumatic events. They may have issues in terms of education, IQ, learning disabilities, ability to articulate and express their emotions. Like, when a lot of the times I find when people tell me they're suicidal, it's not that they actually mean they're suicidal. What they're actually saying is, I'm depressed, I'm stressed, I feel like my life's out of control, or they're trying to say something else. But the end emotional result is, I feel like killing myself. But there's no, it's a really, really hard and gray area to define this. But it's like, you've almost got to look at what they're saying and go, that's what you're saying, this is what they're meaning. And you've got to kind of look at the whole and go, right, okay, I get this. I get where you're coming from. And you've got to kind of relate to, and this is a tricky bit. You got to empathize with someone. And it's very hard to empathize with someone if you don't know where they come from. And if you don't know where they've come from, the only way you can do that is either by being from the places they've come from, or just extensively studying the backgrounds that they've been from, and many people like them have been from. And that's not like them in the sense of just like them. I mean, literally everyone. The broader your the broader your field of experience, and the greater your depth, the broader your field and depth of experience for people in general, the easier it is to relate to and empathize with people, and then the easier it is to make capacity assessments. And so it's really what I'm trying to say to you is, it's like we're having a discussion about autonomy and the right to choose and medical choice. And what you are coming across is everyone's resistances. And to me, they're like everyone's you responses almost. And you found that one guy who's just like, I just do this for a living. I get 500 to do this procedure. And I'm just going to respect this person's decision, because maybe he's done it so many times and he's heard so many different stories that he actually understands, I'm not going to be judgy. I'm not going to try and overly impose my own worldview on this person, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it really does. And, I'm all about the personal autonomy train, because I feel like I could probably devote my entire life to trying to understand life, spirituality, the meaning of it all, and be in no way, shape, or form qualified to even begin to even contemplate at what point life begins, at what point a sovereign, human is born. I have no idea how to debate these topics. And so I feel like almost any attempt.
Can I give you a rough medical view? A really one. A child born before 21 weeks, probability of survival on a neonatology unit, pretty slim to nil. So 21 weeks, on 21 to 24 weeks, tricky, but doable. 24 weeks, still very hard, but that's a much better outcome. So
interesting.
A few years, if you look 10 years ago, certainly 15 years ago, any birth before 24 weeks, no, zero chance. It's maybe only in the last 4 or 5 years where you've been able to go before that boundary. 20 years ago, any birth before, I can't remember what it was, 28 weeks or whatever, that limit, that fetal viability limit has been getting shorter. But right now, it's about 21 weeks.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you know, when I was a lot younger, I had a lot higher capacity to kind of just wax idiotic about sentience and when life begins, and, you know, when is it a clump of parasitical cells, and when does it turn into a human? And like, I just don't know how to have, I just don't even know how to have these arguments responsibly anymore. And not that I even think that they necessarily, you know, will mean anything to the people being affected by, you know, being affected by these states making this more restrictive. And so it's a really interesting thing because, you know, I just don't feel that I should have the power to influence if I don't understand. Right. And so, you know, emotionally, yeah, I don't like the idea of later term abortions, right? And part of me, you know, I still don't know how to be, I still wouldn't even comprehend how to try to enforce whatever my, you know, emotional reaction was in some kind of a way that wouldn't be abusive as law. Not that I ever would want to in the first place. However, the interesting thing about this is that, God, like it's just so complicated to try to pick this stuff apart. And I think that I really think that one of the reasons why, so first off, there's it's hard to find reliable polling data. And it appears to me that, I mean, I'm just talking out my ass. It appears to me the majority of Americans support the idea of access to not only contraception, birth control, but also the access to like safe legal abortion, right? It's pretty clear to me that that's probably what the plurality of Americans want, right? Now, save for a probably relatively small minority that from religious or ideological grounds think that like the procedure shouldn't happen. But in general, I'm pretty sure that it's like in the 80th percentile that abortion should be, safe and legal, right? Two, however, when asked similar questions such as is late term abortion okay? My understanding is that the numbers are fleetingly low. Like 10% think that viable, potentially viable, so what's the terminology for I guess quote unquote the baby in like the third or fourth, in like the later trimesters? Still a fetus? I don't think it's a fetus anymore, is it?
I mean, it is strictly speaking a fetus till the point of birth.
Okay.
Until the point of delivery, it's strictly speaking a fetus.
So we live. So America's a strange place where I'm just talking out my ass, but I'm willing to bet if you ran around on the street with a microphone and asked 1,000 people, do you believe that abortion access should exist and be safe and legal, I'm willing to bet you're going to get 800 or 850 people out of 1,000 saying yes, of course. But if you ask the exact same people a following question of, do you believe in later term abortions clearly after a child could be, the fetus could be birthed, turned into a child, whatever terminology you want to use, and then be put out to adoption, you might get nearly as high of number saying, I don't like that, right? Now, I'm not sure.
Except me, because if you asked me, do I believe in in an abortion of, say, Boris Johnson or most members of the UK cabinet, yeah, I would say, yeah, definitely, we've got to abort them. It doesn't really matter how late their term they are. They just need to be aborted really fast. And I would honor and worship and respect the person brave enough to abort these people and eject them from their not existence, from, they don't even really exist yet because they're just not engaged in the world.
Yeah.
Like a normal human being, that they just need to be aborted. But yes, I get what you're saying.
So it's almost a bit of a duality, or even like a contradiction, right? And so what I think is happening, or at least, like I said, I'm just talking out my ass here, but I've been low grade paying attention to these topics ever since I was young. And what has happened, in my opinion, is that for the most part, the quote unquote conservative right, or the people that are like kind of like, more stalwart religious types, they essentially lost. They lost with Roe v. Wade, and they've lost they've lost in the sense that even though some U.S. states are much less permissive on when you can get an abortion, it's been legal everywhere for 50 years, and most states are incredibly permissive about how often you can do it and under what terms, right? It just so happens, though, that in the past 10 years or so, probably specifically in the last 5, I have sensed, at least from let's call the ideological left, I've sensed a major change in like messaging, and a major change in like the discourse. And not only have I seen people from what I would consider to be the ideological left, whatever that means, I'm just using bullshit terms because I don't even know what these terms mean anymore. But I've seen these people not only defending but supporting extreme late term abortions, believing that 0.00 rights should or could ever be applied to an unborn fetus, no matter how late term it was. And there's been a lot of fanfare, abortions for everybody. There's been a lot of fanfare and talk, and I do legitimately think that this kind of in your face, it's mine to decide to terminate, even as it's being delivered at like full maturity. I think that
even 60 years after birth, when they're fucking up the entire country. But yes, go on.
So, I am personally not jumping in this game and moralizing any of this in any way, shape, or form, but I can tell you for a fact.
Sometimes it's not a moral issue. Sometimes it's an absolute necessity. We have got to abort the UK Prime Minister.
I appreciate you trying to add levity. I do think that that a lot of this rhetoric and a lot of this messaging coming from that particular crowd has pissed off a lot of people, and has taken a lot of people that were otherwise on the fence. They were moderates about the topic. They were just content with legal access, blah, blah, blah. And they've turned. I mean, I probably know a dozen people that are now kind of, I know a dozen people that went from being pro-choice to now being pro-life, with the exception of like rape, incest, like duress, or like medical inviolability.
Expand on something there. So let's say late-term abortion for, a fetus detected to have Down syndrome. You say no, child's born, grows up, lives till 40, 50. Again, 20 years ago, actually 30, 40 years ago, children with Downs living past 40 or 50 was uncommon. You see it a lot better because medical care is better. You see, this cohort, they live a lot longer now. You're going to go to that person and go, hey, do you wish you'd been aborted 40, 50 years ago? Do you want to live? I don't think that's fair, man. And that's where the intrinsic problem comes from, is that why are we pursuing a late term? This is a totally different topic.
Yeah, like it what we're kind of dancing around now is just one of the reasons why I just feel wholly unqualified to even pretend like I can moralize on these topics.
And I almost get really offended at the. I didn't realize actually that was a thing where progressives were very advocative.
And yes, I mean, not only advocating. Literally defending and advocating.
The irony of this, to me, the irony of that is that's so close. That's so close to, often borders on, and actually can quite explicitly be eugenics, which is an extremely right-wing philosophy in a lot of, historically it's been viewed as a right-wing philosophy. But look, I'm drunk. I've been drinking. I've been drinking Irish cream liqueur while we've been chatting, and my mind is loose now.
I think that's good, but I do think that I do think that the kind of rise in the discussion, at least in America, over this topic, I think that I actually feel like for the majority of my adult life, with the exception of a couple states consistently lowering the legal limit in weeks in which they would allow you to perform an abortion, was basically kind of settled. It seemed to me, it seemed to me that in general, if you wanted it, you had access to it, and that if it seemed to me the majority of the persecution for the procedure was going to be coming from family or peer groups. It wasn't a structural impediment, right? And I do really think that some of the kind of more strong messaging among ideological leftists or ideological progressives about full legal access, late term, partial birth, just drilling it all the time. I do think that has like re-ruffled the feathers of the people that were either on the fence or against it to begin with. And I can't see how that didn't play a part in it kind of raising, it kind of growing back up into the social zeitgeist again. And I feel as if in America anyway, that the religiosity of this country has actually reduced since 50 years ago when Roe v. Wade passed. It's my opinion that it's probably in general quite a bit of a less conservative, quote unquote, place than it was 50 years ago. And yet I see all these people that didn't give it a whole lot of thought, were pro-choice, thought that perhaps like an after 21 week abortion was ugly, but perhaps necessary. We're not going to get into people's way. Now jumping on the pro-life bandwagon. And it's also happening strongly among much younger demographics. To me, the whole thing is just gray and nebulous and hard to comprehend.
I just add a bit of further clarity? But 21 to 28 weeks is a horribly nebulous period, which has lots of potential risks, complications. It is not clear cut by any.
Of course,
so you're aware.
Yeah.
And 21 weeks is, really hard limit right now. For most units, it's still 24 weeks. And even that confers considerable problems and rocky road situations.
Yeah. Now another thing I want to get into too, which I think also fascinates people, is that, there's just so many misconceptions, right? Like the United States is like such a weird country, and I feel like it stabs itself in its own foot as often as it doesn't, but it's also super misunderstood. And so, for example, I happen to be looking at a June updated chart right now. It's called On Request Abortion Legal in Week, and this is June 2022 data, and it shows the EU and it shows the United States. Guess what? The EU and the United States still, even with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 states now, even with eight states putting severe restrictions on it or attempting to make it illegal outside of situations of duress, rape, incest, etc. The United States still, on an average, is actually like shockingly more permissive, even with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, than almost the entirety of the European Union. Okay, so what is it in Britain right now? This chart is saying that legal limit is 8 to 20 weeks in Britain, and early pregnancy ends at 12 weaks. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay. There's only one state, Alabama in the United States, out of the states that have moved to make it more restrictive, that have restricted access to where the UK is now. The vast majority of the United States and the vast majority of the population are operating in a substantially more permissive sphere, even with the overturning of this rule. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think so. There's the perception, and then there's the reality.
Correct.
I think if you look at the cultural legacy of America, or of North America, of the United States, as being like this is really difficult being a Brit that's watching the UK turn into a God, it's awful. Fucking fascist, broke, bankrupt shithole state that used to be relatively liberal and used to be like quite an outgoing, easy, liquid nation. But the US has been like a champion of freedom and democratic movements and autonomy, and it's had such, like, I'm going to use the phrase cultural zeitgeist.
Mm-hmm.
US cultural zeitgeist from, let's go back as far as the 1930s. Its influence on the world has been huge.
Yeah,
You
I
literally
agree.
had, like, the Cold War from the 50s onwards was literally Russia and China. It was communism versus democracy. Democracy is defined by the United States. Communism is defined by Russia in conjunction with China. That is literally the level of divide and the level of brevity. You know, this isn't a small thing. So for an outside observer to just go and see the US basically enact a policy that would strip its citizens of considerable autonomy. And I get what you're saying now, in that, you know, the states can now legislate to strip people of that particular autonomy. But that to me is worrying, because you've got non-medically qualified, non-medically experienced elected state representatives making medical decisions on behalf of an entire population.
Yeah.
And that to me is worrying, because actually you said at the beginning, like, I don't think the states should have this power. I don't think the feds should have this power. I actually agree with you. I think this should be like the discretion of, you know, if you're going to have a private healthcare system, fuck it. The private providers should go, yeah, we're offering this, or we're not.
I mean, trust me, like, this is not lost on me. I think that state and federal government having no influence over this, I think that can produce some really ugly realities in some ways. But the problem is that's just the cost of protecting autonomy, and that's the cost of not making like ideological or religious stands and then enforcing those in other people. I don't care how black and white you think things actually are. You know, life is messy, and I don't know what else to do about it. And so, you know, until we get clarity on this messiness of this game of life, I don't think that, you know, I don't think that anything like this should be something that's in the purview of the state. I think that if you're against restricting people's access to abortion, I think that your battle is in the hearts and minds of the culture. It's not trying to grasp at like the levers of political power in order to try to force your will, because all this does is just produce a tribalism, and the other side that doesn't like you is going to do the exact same things. And, you know, and over years, decades, and generations, different sides are going to have different amounts of power on those levers, and they're going to be subjugating the other side. I just don't believe in that at all. And I just don't think that there should be. What's that?
It creates a conflict situation. It's exactly what you're saying. It sows the seeds for conflict, which shouldn't have to exist.
It's just one of those things where, you know, yet again, here I am. I'm just a big fan of decentralization, and, you know, something, you know, now that I live in New Hampshire, the so-called free state, you know, I've heard a lot of arguments and a lot of discussions about, you know, finding ways to have peaceful divorces inside the United States. Now, I'm not at all sympathetic to some of these like kind of more successionist bends that a lot of people are developing. You know, California wants to separate. I mean, when Trump was in office, California wanted to break off, and you know, in New Hampshire, there's a lot of people that want to break off from the federal government because they just view it as being an abusive relationship with little to no gain. I'm not even qualified to jump in, and I just don't have a dog in that race. But what I do see happening is that, you know, and I'm not saying that I agree with what the Supreme Court did. I just have no opinion, actually, because I don't know ultimately what's better for the most people. But, you know, when states get more power, it's a restoration of the republic, to some degree, shape, or form. And I think that a restoration of the public from under the some people would say boot, I'll say under the curtain of a federal centralized authority, I actually think increases decentralization massively, and it allows individuals a greater degree of autonomy, and it allows them to affect a greater degree of personalized preference at the state level, right? So now we're in a situation where all the people, of all the people that think that abortion is bad, no matter what the reason is, they can all move to some state that just made it fucking illegal, right? And and people that don't want get to go somewhere else. But when I say that, like that's very imperfect, because not everyone can just get up and move. Some people will never be able to move or never have the ability to, and they're going to be just living in a shit situation. It's just, I don't know how to do things. I just don't know how we're ever going to get to the point where more people get to live more in line with their values, whatever those are, without a decentralization of centralized power, and increased in local, regional, and state power, and people just having more freedom or more encouragement to basically choose what they want and where they want to go. And so, I know it's super imperfect, and I'm not at all defending what the Supreme Court did. I just don't, it's the whole classic question of, and I trust me, I do not define myself as a libertarian, but it's the classic discussion between, quote unquote, Democrats and Republicans. Democrats want, I'm paraphrasing and I'm being overly simplistic. Democrats want to use the levers of government to, force everyone to do X. Republicans want to use the levers of government to force everyone to do Y. A libertarian would show up and say, I'm going to take your levers away and destroy them. You know what I mean? And I just, I'm definitely attracted to that more, simplified view of just simply neutering the ability for anyone in power to affect you and affect your autonomy on a personal level. And like I said, I think this entire discussion should be had on a cultural level amongst individuals, not at all something that's being affected by the state.
So this is where I go. This is my classic qualm. So this is where I go. Representative democracy is a sham. It's not a democracy. And it's examples like this that to me go, well, listen, if 1,000 people vote for one guy to represent their area, they're trusting that one guy to represent the views of all 1,000 of them. That's really problematic, because that guy may just go, fuck you to all 1,000 of those people and just go do his own thing. But he's got the mandate from those people to go do his own thing because of the way the system is set up.
Yeah.
Likewise, he may represent the views of maybe just 20 of them in the end. He may say, he might wind up appealing to 800 of those 1,000. He might get an 80% approval rate at his poll time. And then he goes, well, fuck it. I'm going to focus on these 20 or 30, maybe 10, maybe 100 people. And in reality, he winds up representing the views of 10%, even though 80% of people voted for him to take that area.
Exactly.
And that's a problem with representative democracy. And this is kind of what's underpinning the structure of this whole debate, is that, well, look, there are people who live in those states which will now ban access to abortion. And these people don't have the resources to move to a different state. They don't have the circumstances that enable them to simply pick up and move.
Correct.
Or get out. And so they're stuck, and they're no longer being represented by this system that is effectively imposing will on them. It's a form of tyranny. Even though it's been decentralized from a federal to a state level, it's tyranny from the federation, tyranny to the state. And actually what you need is direct democracy to go, well, fuck it. That person can actually have a one-to-one, a one issue, one vote, one decision kind of say in every single matter. Because, if if in a given state, if that state operated on, say, a direct democratic model as opposed to a representative democracy model, you'd be like, well, here's the issue. Every individual gets a vote, and we'll just see what that consensus says, as opposed to, here's the issue. There's your representative. He's going to make the decision on your behalf.
Yeah.
And I think we need to move towards more direct representative models in order to ensure that people are being better represented, because I don't think the current model works. You see this again. I've been ragging on the UK, but you see this a lot right now in the UK. You're seeing the abuse of representative democracy, whereby a lot of our politicians are just saying, fuck it. Let's just do whatever the hell we want. And a lot of that is really like illegal or immoral or just straight out reprehensible stuff that's damaging to the country as a whole.
Yeah.
But because they are elected representatives and because the structure gives them that kind of autonomy rather than decentralizes that to the greater population is kind of powerless.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to add insult to injury to this, I've heard, I don't know anything about if this is real, but I've heard that so I'm looking at this chart again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's eight states that have effectively, have effectively eliminated, quote unquote, on request or on demand access to abortion. Now, that does not say this is only on demand, on request. This means there could be no reason. You just want to do it, right? The map does not say, the number of states that would allow abortion on demand due to life of risk, health, rape, fetal impairment, et cetera, et cetera. So the number actually could be less than 8, but let's just assume that it's 8. I've heard, I have no idea if this is true or not, could have just been a rumor, but I've heard that a couple of these states are actually trying to make it illegal for people to leave the state to access these services. That I find to be beyond tyrannical. I can't even really comprehend that. I don't know how they could ever police it. I don't know how they could ever manage it. I hope that doesn't happen. It doesn't make any sense. This is worse than California supposedly trying some years ago. And I think they succeeded in passing a law that actually meant that if you moved out of California, you were still going to be paying taxes into California for X number of years, even after you moved, just simply because you were a resident there. They called it something like a wealth generation, residual tax or some crap, basically saying you moved to California, you got rich, now you're going to take your money away. We're going to still bleed you dry. If I thought that was sinister, I feel like this is diabolical, right? Not allowing people to leave to access services that they can't get in their state. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that's not true, but I don't really know. But yeah,
I mean, if it does happen to the medical providers out there, I'll just say, you guys fucking lie. That's it.
Well, so not only that, but see, one of the main reasons why I just don't believe that the government should be playing around with this anyway is because it's, humans, like we're such animals, right? And if you want to lower the amount of abortions that happens inside your country, the world is full of examples.
The death penalty every time.
Well, I don't think that works. Right. And so, I am many, 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 many years behind on keeping up with these trends and this information. But from my perspective, last time I was looking at this a long time ago, there was a lot of countries that have freakishly lower amounts of freakishly lower incidences of this practice, aka abortion, happening inside their countries. And it was mostly due to the fact that they had a relatively straightforward access to information. They would teach, they would teach people what the risks are of certain behaviors, to be responsible, et cetera, et cetera. Some people in America think that that is either grooming, or they would define that as, as like defining or codifying sexuality to youngsters, et cetera. But the thing is, if you don't want kids to be getting abortions because you believe it's immoral, there's a lot of things you can do that have nothing to do with using powers of the state or federal government to enforce your will that can dramatically reduce the amount of abortions, right, that are happening inside your country. I mean, with the right amount of education, awareness, and access to contraceptions, et cetera, I believe that you can push the rate of unwanted pregnancy to like fleetingly low numbers without even the need to try to do this. I like the legal at the legal level. So, I just think the battle is just all wrong. Not only, it's one of those things where, I mean, to make an incredibly crazy comparison, as like as someone that, eats only a plant-based diet and believes in animal personhood, I would still attempt to help someone go and butcher a deer they hit with their car, because that was going to result in them eating, 80 pounds less meat that come from a factory farm, right? It's completely in line with my beliefs to help people take part in whatever system does the least harm, even if it seems a little strange, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think that's hypocritical. I actually don't. Like, I get where you're coming from. That's a pragmatic viewpoint. And it's interesting you say that. Like, wow. No, but I mean, if you think of, if you think of countries where drug use is relatively decriminalized.
Yep, same thing.
The abuse basically, if you make something less of a taboo.
Yep.
If you make it less of a taboo, if you talk about it a bit more openly, if access to education and knowledge and information on that topic is just generally more available, then it becomes a little less forbidden. And anything that becomes a little less forbidden becomes a little less desirable. You know what I mean? So
yep.
To me, it's just this idea that, look, if you have a sexually open culture, actually the weird irony is you have people having less sex. And I know that sounds really weird, but like, look, if people are just a lot more knowledgeable about what's going on around them, and they understand why that's going on or why people choose to be certain ways, then those things, they don't necessarily become so forbidden. They just become things. And this is a really hard thing to kind of explain, but if they just become things, they're just things that people are aware of. And they're just things that happen, as opposed to this X mysterious thing that I don't know anything about, that I've never heard of before. I've never heard of it before, and I know very little about it, except that I know everyone does it around everyone, behind everyone's backs. And then because everyone's doing it behind everyone's backs, but no one's talking about it, I want to find out what this is. You make the draw of something a lot more and a lot bigger by making it intrinsically forbidden. And to me, well, I mean, fine, I am so all right, so let me level with you right now. I'm going to just I'm getting a bit of feedback, by the way, but no, it's not such a big deal. I have pretty much done everything I want to do in my lifetime, and the weirdest thing is, the more that I explore, the more that I see, and the more that I do, like, weirdly enough, the happier I am with everything that I've done, and the happier I am with the stuff that I have around me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to really explain this beyond, like, I'm not that judgy, because I know lots of different people like to do lots of different things for lots of different reasons. And everyone has their reasons for doing the things that they do. So it's like, look, at the end of the day, if you're not harming anyone, then I don't really have a have a problem with it. Does that make sense?
Oh, of course. I'm the same way.
But I do feel like lots of people have very rigid, they form belief systems where there's a lot of ideas about the way life should be and reality should be and the way things should be. And the more rigid and smaller and defined they are, well, and that's the key word, smaller, the more rigid they are, the more defined they are, the smaller that world becomes. And then the harder it is to understand the people around you.
Yep.
Because everyone comes from different backgrounds and everyone has like their own worldviews and everyone has their own secrets at the end of the day. And everyone's own secrets is based on what they think their taboos are versus what they think your taboos are. So if you don't generally have that many taboos in life, people open up to you. They'll just feel comfortable around you. If you really don't care, like if you and care as in not the I don't care what you've done, I don't care about you at all, not that kind of care. What I mean is the kind of, you're not going to get judgy or judgmental about what someone said. You're just going to understand where they're coming from or make an effort to. Then people will open up to you. And I think this is a thing that I just see. I really don't want to say within religious societies, but I'm going to have to say, I really don't want to say this because there's so many religious societies that I've seen that I really like and are very tolerant and accepting and open and understanding. But there's a lot of religious societies where they go, this is forbidden. You cannot think this. You cannot say this. You cannot do this. This is absolutely outlawed by God or whatever. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. But if you believe that, you're never going to see a whole side of life. You're never really going to understand somebody. There's going to be a whole side of reality that you'll never get to see become. Like, there'll be people who will always avoid saying things to you. They'll always avoid disclosing things to you. They'll never reveal themselves to you because of what you believe, because you've got such a hard-coded view on reality. And I'm just like, yeah. The older I get, it's not, I don't want to say the less I care, but the older I get, the more I care, but the more fluid my beliefs become. And I just want people to do the right thing and just care about each other and just go, look, okay, I see your circumstances. This is who you are. This is what you want. And this is where you're at. And this is why you come, like, okay, I can see if you do this, and this happens, like, you can't do X because of this. And you can't do this because of that. I get it. So I'm going to accept that. Like, you just do what you want, and I'm just going to, like, roll with it and try and get you to the best place you can.
Yeah.
Rather than, I think you should be here no matter what, because that poses a hard border and makes life harder for everyone. It creates a rigidity and it prevents people opening up to you. Sorry, I just went on again because how long into this Irish cream liquor am I? Hey, staring down the empty depth of it. But what I'm trying to say is, like, liberal, progressive, whatever labels you have, I don't fucking care. I really don't fucking care. I just want you to be happy and fulfilled and live life on your own terms. And I just don't like the idea of, I mean, if I was to I just want to run a country where, that's the wrong thing to say already, but I just want to have a country where people just aren't so horrible.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, I feel like that's all I really want too. And I think that's a good spot to end it before we put even more of our foot, calves, and upper thighs into our own mouths.
I've literally stuck so many feet up my ass. This is going to get misquoted, like, literally.
I don't know. I think we did well. But yeah, just again to reiterate, I've said it 400 times. I just don't believe that the state or government should jump in this at all, which technically means that, all that quote unquote unsavory stuff that conservatives or the religious right are against would happen in my world, because I just don't. Yeah. I mean, I would tune in to those debates about the morality of some of these practices on a cultural level, but there's just no way. There's just no way the state should get involved. If the state gets involved with this, we're hosed. I mean, I guess we already are hosed, but we need to unhose ourselves.
I agree with you. Look, I think it's going to be direct democracy. I think what's going on right now, everything like the last 6 months, what we're seeing right now, I've said this before, but it's the idea that it's not just abortion, it's a lot of other things too. It's the idea that representative democracy isn't actually representative of a lot of people, and a lot of people are beginning to realize that, and they're kind of turning against it, and they're looking for a solution how. And to me, it's like direct democracy. How do we bring about the direct democracy solution? And well, you and me have already talked about it to some extent in the past. I've done it with a few of the other free staters as well. But I really do believe like one person, one issue, one vote is the way to go. Sorry, look, I want you to finish this one up because I'm going to hit the end record.
I'm going to hit the end record. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. And if you have any ideas for future topics, hopefully ones that are less spicy and less likely to get us canceled and deleted from the internet, you can show up in the Particle Project chats and let us know what's up, what you think of the show. And yeah, speaking of which, I think there's a pretty big update happening on the crypto particle side of things, involving cross chain swapping, which I'm super excited about. Don't know when it's going to launch, but I would definitely be interested in letting people know about that. And then other than that, yeah, I don't know. I've had too much caffeine. I'm getting ready to go and inspect my gardens that I'm growing for the end times, which I guess are happening now. And Cap is going to have more, was it Irish cream?
It is knockoff Baileys, yes.
Knockoff Baileys?
I call it knockoff Baileys because it's from Lidl. It's deluxe Irish cream, has the great taste label. A luxurious Irish cream liqueur made with fresh Irish cream, fine spirits, and Irish whiskey. And it's also got a security protected label, although I don't actually see one because I didn't steal it.
So funny. Anyway, as you're going to do that, I'm going to go grow food. Cap is going to wind down his evening. And yeah, I know. I hope everyone has a great weekend. It's the 4th of July weekend here in the United States. And considering where I live, I'm going to be listening to the sound of distant crowds cheering, lots of fireworks, incendiaries, the smell of wood smoke, and lots of sounds of automatic small arms fire.
I love your country so much.
If it gets pretty thick, I mean, I am partaking in none of this. I'm just a simple hermit that lives on a hill that grows food and talks to the animals. But people around me are going to be pretty rambunctious, and I'll try to send you a recording if it gets exceptionally verbose in the airwaves.
Oh man, look, I'm just going to say it right now. Look, I really love the United States of America. It's a complicated country, but I love it.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right, we're done.